Hey beloved, welcome back. Happy Tuesday. I'm recording outside today, so I apologize in advance for any additional background noise, people walking by, cars driving by, etc. But welcome back to my channel. Thanks again for joining me today. To piggyback off of last week's conversation, today we're going to be discussing 4 unusual things you should do before confronting your parents. As always, if you appreciate the videos that I'm making, the content that I'm sharing, please leave me a thumbs up, leave me a comment if you have anything to share, questions, agreements, disagreements. When it comes to social media, I'm not really super active on any of them right now. As I mentioned last week, my Instagram has been on the fritz and I haven't been able to access it. So you can contact me on TikTok. My username or handle, whatever it's called, is exactly the same. Doña_the_light. But I'll leave my email address in the description as well if you'd like to contact me directly. So let's dive right in. When it comes to confronting our parents, the very first thing that we really need to do before we even have that conversation is to forgive them. Now, forgiveness is a really tricky word, and it can be kind of triggering to some people because sometimes forgiveness feels like I need to forget that whatever they did happened. Sometimes forgiveness feels like they no longer need to be held accountable for what they did. But to me, forgiveness feels like whatever it is that's holding you, let go of that. Because the reality is you don't have any control over whether or not your parent is going to actually apologize, whether or not they're actually going to be held accountable, hold themselves accountable for the things that they did, the things that they said, the way that they behaved. But there's a saying, and it's a cultural saying. I'm not sure what culture it comes from, but I'll probably look it up after this video, that says, when you hold on to grudges, it's like you're drinking a poison hoping that the other person will die. So when you hold on to that grudge and you hold on to that anger, you hold on to that fear, whatever it is that you are feeling, you're hoping that the other person is going to feel the effects of whatever, but they may not, and they may never. So instead of continuing to hold on to whatever it is that you're feeling, let it go. Release yourself. Forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. And you can still, want that person to be held accountable for their actions, words, behaviors. That's totally okay. But when it comes to forgiveness, in my opinion at least, I believe that we do it for ourselves, because there's no way in any lifetime that we will ever be in control of anyone else's actions other than ourselves, our own. That's it. And you and I both know that even sometimes we do things impulsively, and we do things out of reaction, and sometimes we don't think things through. So I would say in those situations, we're not even in control of our own actions, words, thoughts, and behaviors. The next thing I really encourage everyone to do before confronting their parents is to remember, like I mentioned before, that our parents are still growing up. They're still experiencing new things. Even though they may have children before, they've never parented you as an adult. Even if you have older siblings, your siblings are always going to be different than you. They've never parented you as an adult in 2022. So there are going to be so many new things that they're experiencing, that they're still growing and going through, that they may not know how to handle. They may not have the answers to. They may not know how to approach you about. There may be things that you're doing in your life that may be aligned with what they thought you would do. And then as you got older, sorry, there's flies landing all over me. As you got older, those things changed, and now you're becoming a different person. You're growing into a new person, as you should. We all should grow and evolve and learn as we continue to get older. But perhaps they became very, very comfortable with that previous version of you, and they're still trying to figure out how to navigate this newer, more improved, more mature. Maybe the new version of you has more boundaries. Maybe the new version of you is more stern. Maybe the new version of you is less stern. Maybe the new version of you is more malleable and more down to just, kind of ebb and flow. Maybe previous you was very, very rigid, right? So just as you're learning how to navigate the world around you, they're learning how to navigate the world around them. So give them the same grace that you would a child. Give them the same grace that you would yourself as you're continuing to learn and grow and mature and just move through this world in a way that allows for mistakes to be made. Remember that we are all going to make mistakes, even our parents. And even if they can't admit, how their mistakes impact other people, remember that they're going to make them. And we have to expect that they're going to make mistakes. We have to expect that change is going to be hard for them, right? And that's actually unusual thing number 3 is before confronting your parents about any specific thing, or maybe just your childhood in general, remind yourself that this conversation is going to be difficult for them, right? Because change is difficult. Not only is change difficult, but being told that you have to be responsible and accountable for your own actions when that may not be something that you're used to hearing or may not be something that you're used to doing is going to be very, very difficult. So expect that this conversation is going to be difficult for them. Expect that you may get some pushback. Expect that they may not want to talk to you for a little while. Expect that they may be very defensive. Expect that they may come up with a trillion excuses as to why they've done what they've done, said what they've said, behaved in the way that they've behaved, because it's a defense mechanism. And oftentimes when we speak to people directly, even though we're not being malicious, even though we're not being mean, even though we're not attacking their character, that's what it feels like. So it puts us on the defense, right? If someone were to tell me, hey, Doña, you shouldn't be bringing your newborn out into the sun because his skin is super sensitive. I might hear, hey, Doña, you're a bad parent. Even though that's not what that person said, but that's what I am. That's what that makes me feel. Hearing that I have done something wrong or have made a mistake, and someone just speaking directly to me saying, hey, this isn't a good idea, or hey, this isn't great for blank, makes me feel as though whatever role I'm moving in this situation, it would be my role as a parent, my role as a mother, I'm doing something wrong and now I'm harming my child. When in reality, this person is just offering a suggestion and saying, hey, this is something that you should consider. Or, hey, this is a mistake that's probably super common that you may not even be aware that you're making, right? So being aware that this happens isn't going to make it easier to accept it if it's happening to you. So when you bring something up to your parents, when you address something with them, just understand that it's going to be difficult. Understand that it's going to take time, right? And unusual thing number 4 is just to be prepared for it to take a long time. Be prepared, be mentally prepared for this to be a process. Do not go into the conversation thinking, oh, this is going to be instant. All I have to do is tell them my concerns and then everything will be beautiful and we'll have the most amazing relationship and whatever. There's no guarantee that your relationship will improve after you share these things with them. There's no guarantee that it's going to get worse. There's no guarantee that there will be any change at all, right? Because you have to consider the fact that in this conversation, it's either going to be you and one parent or you and both parents. And, having 2 or 3 people in the equation is already a large amount of variables. So understand that whatever expectations you may have, they may not be realistic, right? So not only is this going to be a process, but you may have to adjust your expectations of what you want to happen after you have this conversation. And I think that's something else that you should definitely do prior to the conversation is, what do you want to happen? If you bring up to your mom that, her spanking you or her berating you or just yelling at you in general every time you got a bad grade, if you bring up to her that this was very, very hurtful to you and that, over time you've developed this struggle with, perfectionism and feeling like everything you do has to be extremely perfect, that you cannot make mistakes or you're not allowed to make mistakes. If you're approaching her and bringing this to her attention, what do you want to happen? Do you want her to just acknowledge the fact that she did that? Do you want her to change her behavior? Maybe you have a younger sibling and you'd like her to change her behavior so that your younger sibling doesn't go through this. when it comes to these expectations, remember that, once again, you cannot control anything that anybody else does. So perhaps your expectation should just be based on your parents' interaction or your mother's interaction with you. I would like for you to no longer do this to me. And that's it. And once again, you can't control it, but you can set that boundary. You know, this has been so hurtful to me in the past that I'm setting a boundary that, you know, if I express to you some sort of concern or some sort of mistake or anything along those lines, and you respond in this way, this is going to be the boundary that I'm enforcing, and this is going to be the consequence if you, what's the word? Cross that boundary. If you don't honor that boundary, this is going to be the consequence, and then move forward from there. You don't have any control over whether or not they're going to treat your sibling the same way. You don't have any control over whether or not they're going to show any type of remorse for the way that they treated you, you know, in your childhood or when you were younger. You don't have any control over that. So once again, in addition to fully understanding and accepting that this is going to be a process, remind yourself that you cannot control anything that your parent or parents do, and that your expectations have to be realistic. So all of these things can take place before you have this conversation, and it'll just help it be a more fruitful conversation, a more fruitful progression of your relationship, right? But just give grace. Give grace. Allow this to happen over a period of time. Don't rush it. You know, if it has to happen in like 1 week spurts, that's totally okay. Or maybe every month you have a topic or something that you'd like to, you know, follow up on, have conversations. Maybe you and your parents choose to write to each other instead of having face-to-face conversations. Maybe that's a little bit easier in the beginning. And then as you know, kind of come to a sort of common ground, then you can start having face-to-face meetings. And of course, as always, please never be afraid to involve a therapist, because a professional is always going to be able to help you navigate these situations better and more condusively. Okay? It's been a pleasure, beloved. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be back next Thursday with the next video. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.